Hi everyone, and welcome to kind of a fun weekend automotive live stream. I figured, hey, why not? And winter is still upon us. The snow is still melting out there, which kind of brings me to today's topic, because this has kind of been happening to me a lot. Not the dead battery portion, but being the good Samaritan, helping some neighbors out with their dead batteries. So today we're going to talk about how to jumpstart your car, both the traditional way with jumper cables, the safe way, and also using some of the other things that make life a little easier, takes out a lot of the guesswork. I'm Rachel DeBarros, and this is Gearhead Diva. So I have a great neighbor down the street, and she kind of stops by every once in a while this winter with a dead battery. And yeah, it's about time for her to replace it, and I'm sure she's getting around to it. But I figured, what a great topic. I know we've all been victims of this, and it always happens at the worst time. Usually you're trying to rush out the door to work, or maybe you've done a lot of grocery shopping, or you're at the mall, you're tired, exhausted, and the last thing you want to do is come to a car that just won't start. So jump starting your car is pretty easy. I assume that you all have at least one of these sitting in your trunk. So that's actually the easy part. Probably the hard part is to find that good Samaritan to help you. And I don't know, sometimes I have a lot of luck with this. Other times I don't. They're like running away, avoiding me like the plague. So let's go over some of the simple things to look out for, so that way you can do this easy on your own, plus that good Samaritan. So of course, first you're going to need a set of jumper cables, and then find that good Samaritan. And then once you do, position the cars close together. And so here in this case, I'm going to be the good Samaritan in the white Hummer. And of course, our dead battery is the blue Caliber here. And you see that the cars are positioned close. Now, how close you position your cars really depends on how long your jumper cables are. And of course, you don't want the cars touching, but you want enough room for you to be able to maneuver around them. Now, my jumper cables are pretty long, so I didn't have to get that close. So the first thing you want to do is, once you have the cars positioned, is to turn them off and remove the keys from the ignition. Now, with the car with the dead battery especially, you want to make sure you turn everything off, like all the accessories, like the radio, air conditioning, if it's that time of year, heater, lighting. You just want the car to focus on starting, and then we can turn the rest of that stuff on later. So everything off, car is in park, of course. So now we're going to pop open both hoods and identify the location of the batteries, because we know that with late model vehicles, they can be under the hood, in the passenger seat, in the trunk. So let's go battery hunting. So for a Caliber here, you can see that the battery is the easy scenario. It is under the hood, and look at that nasty positive terminal with all that corrosion. And here I've identified the negative, and one way you can identify it is that it branches off quickly and it attaches to a ground. So let's say that the colors of the cables have faded. Maybe they're super dirty, and the battery, well, there's no markings or indication of which is positive or negative. A good way to find it is just to trace those wires, and the negative will always branch off rather quickly and connect to a ground. So Caliber is taken care of. So let's look at the Good Samaritan vehicle, our Hummer, and see where that battery is. And of course, that is also under the hood. I'm starting you guys off with a simple scenario. And in this case, you can see they have these elaborate covers. It helps to keep the terminals from getting corroded, offers an extra layer of protection. They are also very clearly marked. So I'm going to go ahead and bust them open so we can get ready for our jump starting procedure. And you can see a little corrosion there on the negative terminal. So before you get started, I mean, we all saw that nasty corrosion on the caliber. If you have a rag or you have some kind of paper towel, you definitely want to clean that off so you get a good contact. Now in this scenario, we're leaving all that corrosion on because I'm going to do a cool video for you guys on how to clean battery posts. So we're going to rock through this with all that corrosion on the caliber. So from this point on, we're about to start hooking up the cars. So you know what that means. No touching of the clamps. You want to make sure that they stay apart. So good thing to do is lay the other end down on the floor and make sure the clamps stay apart. So we're going to start with the caliber. I always like to start with the positive terminal of the dead battery. You always start with the positive terminal first. I like to start with the dead battery. And the other thing to look out for is look at the condition of the battery. Maybe it's not such a great idea to start it if you smell sulfur. If you see that the casing of the battery is cracked, if the battery doesn't look like it's in good condition, then in that case, I would look into getting a new battery. But looking at our caliber here, we're gonna go for it. The battery looks good other than this nasty corrosion. So I'm clamping it to the positive post, giving it a good old wiggle just to make sure it's not gonna jump off. The negative, well, we're just gonna leave that on a piece of plastic for now. And so we started with the red. We're going to continue with the red on the Good Samaritan vehicle. So here I am. You saw the clamps stay apart. And we're going to go ahead and clamp on the positive of the good battery, followed by the negative of the good battery. So far, so good. And now we're going to make our final connection. And oh, don't you do that. Don't you connect that negative to the negative post of the dead battery. And now, some of you will say, well, I do this all the time, and there's no problem. I jumpstart my car successfully doing this. And maybe you have, and that's great. But anytime you're about to complete a connection, well, that's a chance where a spark could happen. And if the battery isn't in the greatest condition, it could be venting gas, and then you can get a spark followed by some fire. And then next thing you know, you have a nice little bonfire going, which I don't know, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing in the winter, some s'mores. But in this case, we're going to try and avoid any underhood fires. So the way you want to connect your negative is to find a ground on the dead car. So on the good car, positive and negative, connect it right to the post. But in the dead car, you connect the positive to the post. But for the ground here, you want to look for a ground on the car. Now, this can be any metal portion of the car. It could be the body. But a lot of times that body panel or body bolts and nuts, well, they're painted over. So you want the clamp to actually touch metal. So another good source of metal is the engine itself. Well, the engine is metal. So as you look through the engine, sometimes bolt heads, I find that nuts are great to clamp onto, or sometimes engines will have a natural protrusion that you can clamp onto. But one thing you want to make sure you stay away from is flammable lines. Because remember, there is a chance that this could spark, and we don't want sparks near lines, fuel lines running near the area. So let's start with the caliber and see kind of some clamping options that I looked for in this scenario. So looking through, one of the problems with engines is there's plastic everywhere. I mean, just looking for a place to clamp, plastic here, plastic there. So wait a minute, that hook right there, it's metal and it's connecting to a metal engine. So we have a metallic connection, good ground, except for that line, which some of you have already read, caution, fuel, flammable. Well, our first try here is, well, not so good. I probably would not use that hook as a connection. So yeah, look for hoses. They're usually labeled. If the labeling is worn off, just continue looking for other spots. So let's continue the hunt on our caliber here so we can finish this jump. And I'm going to try and peek over the engine and check that out. Some metal. This is a metal protrusion coming out of the engine, and it's sitting below that connection. I know it looks deceiving, like they're touching, but they're not. So that's a hookup point right there, and you'd be ready to jump start your car. But I'm going to tell you my super secret favorite ground connection, and it almost never fails because you can find this on just about every car except trucks and cars like my Hummer. And we're going to get into a lot more ground options in a little bit. So check this out. And we're going to follow along to the strut tower. Now, this is my favorite place to connect for a ground. You see you're clamping onto bare metal, and I'm choosing this furthest nut here that's connected to the stud, the bolt stud holding in our strut tower here. So this is the way that I would go if I were jump starting the caliber. So we have everything hooked up, all connections are great. You start the good car, obviously, let that run for a bit, and then you try and start the car with the dead battery. And if it jumps, well, you're on your way, let that run a little bit, and as soon as you get that started, go ahead and start disconnecting everything. And now you're ready to go. But if your car doesn't jump, well, then let the good car run for a little while longer and then try again. So we saw how you got to hunt for a ground a little bit with our caliber. So let's look at other under the hood scenarios and see where I would hook up a ground. And to get started, I showed you my old strut tower secret. Well, check your owner's manual, because a lot of times they'll make a provision for you to clamp onto, and it's usually pretty obvious, really easy to get to. Like my Hummer here. Say the Hummer was the dead battery. You can see that the positive is clamped on, and check out this bracket. It's metal and it's connecting to the engine. So metal to metal contact, that's a great ground. And I also cheated a little bit, because if you look in the owner's manual, it says to connect it right there. They're all like highlighted in different colors. So the owner manuals was a great help. Get yours out and just have an idea of how to connect your car. That way, if you find yourself in the same predicament, you're not like freezing outside trying to figure out where to connect that ground. You already know ahead of time. And some of you that the owner manuals don't tell you where to connect, like our caliber situation, heck, snap a picture of the engine bay, post it down below, and we'll try and figure it out together. Post a short vid going around like I did, and maybe we can hunt for a ground together. And then here on our Durango, this is an example of where the battery is nowhere under the hood. It is actually under the passenger seat. But they make provisions for that. You can see the positive and negative jump points under the hood. Now this is near the passenger side. So all you have to do is lift the covers, and you can see a nice juicy clampable post right there and here, so you don't have to try and bury yourself in the engine bay trying to find hookup points. And you can see everything is clearly labeled there. But okay, so you all know how to find your grounds. We showed you a couple example vehicles using just some of my own vehicles. And well, by now I've I've ditched these things, and at home I have one of these. Now I used to have it in my car, but the thing with it is it is so heavy, this thing. And can you imagine, unless you strap it down pretty well in your car, I mean, I wouldn't want this as a projectile, but this is pretty nifty because it takes all the guesswork out. It's a jumper pack, and on the back too, well, another winter woe is those low pressure tires. So come out trying to get to work and your wheel is basically touching the pavement. Well, it's got a little compressor there. So all you have to do is make sure that you charge it every 30 days. And we can see here, I can check my battery status and look at that, freshly charged. So I'm ready to jump somebody. So this is pretty good. What I like about it is it does take the guesswork out, because check this out, using my Hummer as an example. All you have to do is, charge it up, check the status. You can see here, I'm good for another jump, but then I gotta, charge this again. You want to leave it in the off position and grab the clamps in the back, and sometimes you gotta balance this thing in your engine bay somewhere, but usually the cables are long enough to reach. And this is super easy. All you have to do is, starting with the positive, hook it up, and then the negative right on the battery. You don't have to sit there finding grounds. You just use both posts and then turn the unit on. And then once it's on, go ahead and try and start your vehicle. And after that, you hear your vehicle running, immediately go out there, disconnect it, turn it off, and you're good to go. So keeping one of these is great in the car. Again, little heavy, would want to probably strap it down. So this one, I actually keep at home for all the cars in case we have kind of a jam up with the battery situation. But what I keep inside the car is that they have these tiny little units now, and they're cool. They recharge your laptop, your phones and things, but check out how tiny it is. And I do admit, I did have my reservations about this, because really something like this is going to jumpstart my whole car. But it really works. And again, it works just like the jumper pack. Post to post, match up the posts, and they also have a reverse polarity, so in case you do switch it up, those wires have lost their color, nothing is labeled, that's fine. You'll usually get an indicator light telling you so. So that's been kind of like my quick talking to you all on a Saturday afternoon type of stream, looking at ways to jumpstart your car and kind of what I found that works for me and may not work for me. So now I'd love to hear from you guys. Tell me about your jumpstarting woes. I mean, have you had dead battery this winter? I've been lucky. I have not, but my poor neighbor, not so lucky. So what about you guys? Or if you have some tips and tricks on finding those pesky grounds, let me know. Post it down in the comments. And until next time, I'll be talking to you guys later. Bye!